The call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. My brother informed me that Mom had died. 3 hours later, I discovered she was alive. And what came next? What my mother had been planning for months, I never would have imagined. An 82-year-old woman faking dementia to discover which of her children truly loved her and which one was just waiting for her to die to steal her inheritance. But before we get into the story, support us by hitting that like button and subscribing right now. I also want to give a shout out to you guys. Leave your name, your city, and your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks. I was already awake when the phone rang, drinking my second coffee and watching the rain fall on the streets of Lincoln Park in Chicago. The name on the screen showed Mark Brother. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, not since our last tense visit to Mom's nursing home. Robert, his voice had that fake solemnity that immediately put me on alert. I have difficult news. Mom passed away last night, peaceful, in her sleep. I set the mug down on the table, my hands suddenly shaking. What? When? I was going to visit her today. The funeral is Friday, he continued, cutting me off. His tone shifted, becoming almost businesslike. I've already made all the arrangements. Oh, and Robert, about Mom's estate. The will is very clear. Everything goes to me. The house in Oak Park, the property in Lake Geneva, her investments, everything. You get nothing. Don't even think about contesting it. And he hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the phone in disbelief. My mother, dead, just like that. And Mark's first priority was to inform me I wouldn't receive anything. Not, I'm sorry, not, she went peacefully, but a threat not to fight the will. Something was very, very wrong. Let me backtrack. My name is Robert Miller. I'm 64 years old, a retired civil engineer who spent 40 years designing infrastructure all over the country. My wife, Grace Myers, passed away 3 years ago from cancer. We had a daughter, Danielle, who is now 28 and works as a marine biologist in San Diego. After Grace died, I took refuge in volunteering and staying close to Mom. She had been my rock during my grief. My brother, Mark, is 4 years younger, 58. We grew up close enough, playing football in the backyard of our old house in the Gold Coast. But as adults, we drifted apart. Mark became a real estate agent, married Fiona, and had 2 kids. On the surface, everything looked fine, but I had noticed things over the years. Mark was always chasing the next big deal, always stretching himself financially. His company hit rough patches. There were whispered conversations at family dinners about investments gone wrong, about Fiona working double shifts as a nurse to keep them afloat. Our mother, Sarah Miller, was 85 years old and had been sharp as a tack her whole life. A retired teacher, she could still recite poetry by heart and beat anyone at Scrabble. She lived independently in her house in Oak Park until about 9 months ago, when Mark convinced her she needed extra help. He suggested becoming her power of attorney, just to handle accounts and doctor's appointments. Mom hesitated, but Mark was persuasive. He was her baby, after all. That was when everything changed. Weeks after Mark got power of attorney, Mom was suddenly diagnosed with severe dementia. Mark admitted her to a nursing home, Southern Gardens Assisted Living, saying she could no longer live alone. When I visited, I was shocked. My vibrant, witty mother was sitting in a chair, staring into space. She didn't recognize me. She barely spoke. When she did, it was confused, fragmented. Is this really possible? I asked her doctor, Dr. Reynolds. 2 months ago, she was perfect. Dementia can progress very rapidly in some cases, he said softly. Cognitive decline in patients of her age can be quite sudden. But I wasn't convinced. Still, I visited 3 times a week. Even when she didn't know who I was, I held her hand, told her about Danielle, about my volunteer projects. Mark visited too, but less frequently. When he did, he always seemed rushed, always checking his watch. Now, standing in my kitchen with Mark's words still ringing in my ears, I realized what I had been too blind to see. This wasn't grief talking. It was greed. I immediately called Southern Gardens. I'm calling about my mother, Sarah Miller, I said when someone finally answered. I just found out she passed away last night. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, but I have no record of that. Let me check her room. My heart started pounding. A few minutes later, the nurse came back on the line. Sir, your mother is fine. She's eating breakfast right now. Is there some confusion? I sat down heavily. Can you do me a favor? Don't tell anyone I called, especially not my brother. I hung up and immediately dialed my daughter. Danielle answered on the third ring, sounding worried. "Dad, it's barely 7 in the morning, Pacific time. What happened? Your uncle just told me your grandma died, but she didn't die. She's alive. Danielle, I think Mark is trying to steal her estate." There was silence. Then, "Dad, that's elder abuse. It's fraud. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I need to figure it out fast. He said the funeral is Friday. That's 3 days." After talking to Danielle, I spent the morning making calls. First, I contacted a lawyer I had worked with before, attorney Edward Flowers. I explained the situation. "Robert, this is serious," Edward said. "If your brother has power of attorney and is misrepresenting your mother's condition or misappropriating her assets, we are talking about criminal charges. But you need evidence, solid evidence." Then I hired a private investigator, Lucy Morris, Mawson. She came to my house that afternoon, a sharp woman around 45 with gray streaking her dark hair. "How long has your brother held power of attorney?" she asked, taking notes. 9 months, right after Mom supposedly developed dementia. "And before that, your mother was competent?" "Completely. She volunteered at the library, played dominoes twice a week. Then suddenly she couldn't even remember her own name." Lucy nodded. "I've seen cases like this. Give me 48 hours. I'll find out what's going on with your mother's finances." Guys, every story I tell you happens every day, but YouTube will only show them to you if you hit the red subscribe button. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and you'll never miss a story. Thanks. That night I drove to Southern Gardens. I didn't warn them I was coming. When I got to Mom's room, she was sitting in her usual chair by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Her gray hair was thinner now, her face more wrinkled than I remembered. But something about her seemed different tonight, less drugged, more present. "Mom," I said softly, pulling a chair up beside her. She turned slowly, those familiar brown eyes meeting mine. There was something in them. Recognition? Or was I imagining it? "It's me, Robert, your son." She blinked, her mouth moving as if she wanted to say something. But then a nurse came in to check her vitals, and the moment was lost. I drove home in the rain, my mind racing. What was Mark planning? A fake funeral to convince everyone Mom had died? And then what? Transfer all her assets while everyone thought she was gone? It was insane. It was also, I was realizing, potentially brilliant in its audacity. Lucy called me the next morning. "Robert, you need to sit down." I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear. "Your brother has been very busy. In the last 8 months, he has transferred approximately $280,000 from your mother's accounts to his own. He sold her vacation house in Lake Geneva to a shell company, which I'm still tracking, but I suspect he's behind it. He's also been using her credit cards. And Robert, the doctor who diagnosed your mother's dementia, Dr. Reynolds, went to college with your brother. They've been friends for 30 years. I felt sick. So Mom's dementia could be medically induced. If they are overprescribing sedatives or antipsychotics, it would explain the sudden cognitive decline and absent behavior. That is attempted murder. That's what we need to prove. I'm getting copies of her medical records, but that takes time. In the meantime, I would suggest you visit your mother again. Document everything. Record conversations with your brother if you can. It's tricky, but with consent or in public spaces, do what you can. That afternoon, I was back at Southern Gardens. I had brought my phone, ready to record anything suspicious. But when I got to Mom's room, it was empty. A nurse I didn't recognize was changing the sheets. "Where is my mother?" I asked, panic rising. "Oh, Mr. Miller, your brother took her out for a drive. He said she needed fresh air." My blood ran cold. "When?" "About an hour ago." I ran to the parking lot, but Mark's black Mercedes was already gone. I tried calling him. He didn't answer. I called 5 times. Nothing. Finally, 3 hours later, they returned. Mark helped Mom out of the car, holding her up as she shuffled back to her room. She looked exhausted, confused. Mark saw me waiting in the hallway. "Robert," he said, not even bothering to hide his annoyance. "What are you doing here? You said Mom died yesterday, and here she is." He had the audacity to laugh. "Ah, that. Yeah, sorry for the confusion. I meant to call you back. False alarm. Mom had a bad episode yesterday, and I thought, well, you know, these things happen with dementia. Where did you take her today?" "Just for a drive. She likes to get out." "Really? Because she looks like she can barely stand." "Back off, Robert. His voice dropped, became harder. I am her power of attorney. I make the decisions about her care, not you. You want to challenge that? Get a lawyer. He pushed past me, helping Mom into her room. Through the door, I saw him settle her into her chair, speaking to her in a low voice I couldn't hear. Then he left, not even looking at me as he walked by. I was about to leave when my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello? Silence, then a whisper. A woman's voice, weak and raspy. Robert. Yes, who is this? Robert, it's me. The voice was so low I had to press the phone against my ear. Who? I'm your mother. I froze. That couldn't be. Mom was right there in her room, and this call was coming from... I checked the screen, a blocked number. Robert, listen carefully. I don't have much time. I need you to come to my room tonight, late, after 10. Make sure Mark isn't here. And Robert, don't tell anyone about this call. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot, the rain falling around me, looking at my phone as if it had transformed into something alien. That was impossible. Mom couldn't have called me. She could barely string 2 words together. And yet that voice, even whispered and strained, had sounded like her, the real her, the sharp, lucid woman I had known all my life. I waited in my car until after 10 at night, watching the nursing home. Mark's Mercedes was long gone. The night shift was on duty, just a skeleton crew. I signed in at the front desk and headed to Mom's room. She was sitting on the bed, the lights low. When I walked in, she turned to look at me, and in the dim light, I saw her eyes clear, focused, completely lucid. Close the door, she said in a normal voice, not the confused mumble I had heard for months. A normal, strong voice. I closed the door, my hands shaking. Mom, what? Sit down, honey. We need to talk, and we don't have much time. I sat, completely stunned. Are you okay? What is happening? My mother, who I thought was lost in the fog of dementia, smiled at me. She really smiled, with that mischievous expression I remembered from childhood when she caught Mark and me stealing cookies before dinner. I'm fine, Robert. I've been fine this whole time. But the dementia, the diagnosis, you couldn't even recognize me. Because I was faking. The room seemed to tilt. Faking? She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was firm, steady. Nothing like the weak, trembling hands I had held for months. Robert, I'm 85. I've been thinking a lot about mortality, about what happens when I'm gone, and I realized I needed to know something. I needed to know which of my children would really take care of me. Not for my money, not for the inheritance, but because they love me. So you faked dementia to test us? When Mark suggested becoming my power of attorney, I saw an opportunity. I agreed. But I also consulted my own lawyer, someone Mark doesn't know. I put the majority of my assets into an irrevocable trust weeks before Mark got the power. The accounts he has access to, I only left enough in them to see what he would do. I couldn't process this. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Her eyes grew sad. Because I had to test both of you. I had to see who would visit me when I couldn't give them anything in return. Who would hold my hand even when I didn't know their names? And Robert, you came 3 times a week. You sat with me. You talked to me. Even when I acted like I had no idea who you were. Tears ran down my face. Of course I came. You're my mother. I know that now. But Mark, she shook her head. Mark failed, Robert. Worse than I ever imagined. I've been documenting everything. Every time he came to pressure me to sign papers. Every time he got angry when I played confused. Every time he took something from this room thinking I wouldn't notice. I have it all recorded. The $280,000. He took it from the accounts I left accessible. I've been letting him dig his own grave. Mom, he told me you died. He's planning a funeral for Friday. She nodded. I know. He told me today during our drive. He said I was going to have an accident, that I would slip away quietly. He wanted me to agree to sign papers first, transferring everything, but I refused. I played confused. He's running out of time, and he knows it. This is crazy. This is dangerous. We have to call the police right now. No, not yet. Edward Flowers, your lawyer. He's been my lawyer too for the last month. We have a plan, but I need you to trust me, Robert. Can you do that? I squeezed her hand. Always. Over the next 2 days, we set everything up. Edward brought in the police, but discreetly. They agreed to let Mom's plan play out to catch Mark in the act with irrefutable evidence. We installed hidden cameras in Mom's room, tiny things the size of a button. We coordinated with the nursing home staff, the ones we could trust. And Mom continued her performance, playing the confused, deteriorating patient whenever Mark was around. Mark came 2 more times, once to bring papers for Mom to sign, transfer documents for her house. Mom scribbled something illegible, acted like she didn't understand. Mark's frustration was visible, barely contained. "Just sign clearly, Mom," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm trying to help you." The second time, Thursday night, he brought a syringe. I watched the video later, and it made me physically sick. He told Mom it was her medicine, but we had it analyzed later. It was a massive dose of sedatives, enough to knock out a horse. Mom pretended to take it, but hid the pills. "Tomorrow," Mark said, stroking her hair. "Tomorrow you'll finally be at peace, Mom. No more suffering." Friday morning arrived. Mark had booked the St. Angeles funeral home. He had sent notices, called relatives. Cousins I hadn't seen in years called me offering condolences. I played along. "Yes, the funeral is at 2 in the afternoon. Yes, it was very sudden." The funeral home was packed. Mark had gone all out, flowers everywhere, a large photo of Mom from 20 years ago at the front. He had even written an obituary full of flowery language about beloved mother and, after a long illness. I sat in the front row with Danielle, who had flown in that morning. Mark sat across the aisle with Fiona and their kids. His face was composed, appropriately grieving. Fiona kept touching his arm, comforting him. His kids looked genuinely sad. They had loved their grandmother. If you want to know how this story ends, and hear many more, hit the red subscribe button. It's free and helps me out a ton. At exactly 2 o'clock, Mark stood up to give the eulogy. He walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began to speak. "We are here today to celebrate the life of Sarah Miller, born February 14th, 1939, died January 7th, 2025. Mom was an incredible woman, a teacher who shaped young minds for 35 years, a mother who always put her children first. And in her final months, she trusted me to take care of her. She knew I would protect her interests, handle her affairs, and make sure she was comfortable." He paused, his voice cracking with emotion that I now knew was completely fake. "Mom always loved me best," he continued. "She told me many times. She knew I was the responsible one, the one who would take charge. She wanted me to have her house, her property, everything she had worked for, because she trusted me to use it wisely, to take care of the family." I stood up. Every head in the room turned. "That's interesting, Mark," I said loudly. "Do you want to tell everyone where Mom actually is right now?" Confusion swept through the room. Mark's face went white. "Robert, sit down. This isn't the time." "Where is the body, Mark? Where is Mom's body?" "She's being cremated. We discussed this." "Really?" "Because I called the crematorium. They don't have her." Fiona grabbed Mark's arm. "Mark, what is he talking about?" The doors at the back of the funeral home opened. Every person in the room turned, and there, framed in the entrance, was my mother. She walked slowly using a walker, but her back was straight and her eyes sharp. Behind her, 2 uniformed police officers followed. The room erupted. People stood up, gasping. Someone screamed. Mark's daughter burst into tears. Mom advanced down the aisle. When she reached Mark, she stopped. "Hello, son," she said clearly. "I'm not dead, but your inheritance is." Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Mom, you're confused. You're sick. This is a mistake." "I'm not confused, Mark. I've been recording everything for the last 8 months. Every threat, every theft, every time you tried to make me sign documents transferring my assets to you, every time you drugged me to keep me submissive." She turned to the gathered crowd. Many of them were crying now, some from relief, others from shock. "I'm sorry to have deceived you all," Mom said, "but I had to know the truth. I had to see what my son would do when he thought I was defenseless. And what I found broke my heart." One of the officers stepped forward. "Mark Miller, you are under arrest for elder abuse, grand theft over $5,000, fraud, and attempted probate fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Mark tried to run. He actually tried to shove the officer and bolt for the door, but he only managed 3 steps before being tackled and handcuffed. His children were sobbing. Fiona stood frozen, her face a mask of horror. As they dragged Mark away, he screamed at Mom, "I'm your son. You can't do this to me. I needed that money." Mom watched him go, tears streaming down her face, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "You were my son, but you stopped being my child the moment you decided my life was worth less than my bank account. The legal proceedings took months. Mark initially tried to fight the charges, claiming Mom was truly incompetent and he was only trying to help, but the evidence was overwhelming. Videos of him trying to force her to sign documents, audio recordings of his threats, bank records showing the theft, Dr. Reynolds' testimony after he was granted immunity regarding how Mark had pressured him to prescribe unnecessary medications. In the end, Mark pleaded guilty. He got 5 years in prison, was ordered to pay back the $280,000 he had stolen, plus $50,000 in fines. He lost his real estate license permanently. Fiona divorced him, got full custody of the kids. They were devastated, but Danielle and I tried to stay in their lives, tried to be the stable family they needed. Dr. Reynolds lost his medical license. He had knowingly prescribed dangerous drugs to an elderly patient at the request of her power of attorney without proper evaluation. As for Mom, she moved into a small condo near my house. She was done with the big house, done with maintaining properties. She wanted to be close to family, to Danielle when she visited, to me. We had dinner together twice a week. She went back to volunteering, this time at an elder abuse prevention center, sharing her story to help others recognize the warning signs. We established the Sarah Miller Elderly Protection Fund. With part of the money Mark paid back, it provides legal assistance to seniors fighting cases of financial abuse and funds educational programs about power of attorney responsibilities. One afternoon, about a year after it all happened, Mom and I were sitting on my back deck watching another Chicago rainstorm. She was holding a cup of tea, wrapped in a thick blanket. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "The way you tested us?" She was quiet for a long time. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my own son could do what he did. But Robert, I don't regret discovering the truth. I had to know who would love me when I had nothing to give." "You gave me everything that mattered," I said. "You taught me integrity. You taught me that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She smiled, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "And that's why you passed the test. Not because you visited me, although that mattered, but because even when you thought I was gone, even when you thought you were getting nothing, you fought for what was right. You didn't let Mark get away with it. You protected me even when I couldn't protect myself. That is what family does. Real family." "Yeah, but blood doesn't make you family, Robert. Love does. Choice does. Showing up does. Mark was my blood, but he stopped being family the moment he decided I was just an asset to be liquidated." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the rain pool on the fence, on the bare trees. Inside, I could hear my phone vibrating. Danielle, probably calling from San Diego for our weekly chat. Mom's lawyer maybe, with updates on the charity fund. Life moving forward. Mom looked at me, her eyes still sharp and clear. "You know what the saddest part is?" "What?" "If Mark had just asked, if he had been honest about his financial trouble, I would have helped him. Not with everything, not enabling bad decisions, but I would have helped him. Instead, he chose to steal. He chose to treat me like I was already dead, and that choice cost him everything." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just held her hand. This remarkable woman who had taught me more about strength and dignity in the last year than in all the years before. She had survived the betrayal of her own son, orchestrated her own rescue, and came out the other side determined to help others. That's the thing about family, real family. It's not about blood. It's not about inheritance. It's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when they can't give you anything in return. It's about fighting for what's right, even when it means standing up to your own brother. Mark made his choices. He chose greed over love. He chose theft over integrity. And he is paying the price, not just in prison time, but in the loss of his children's respect, his wife, his career, and his mother's love. As for me, I got something much more valuable than any inheritance. I got more years with my mother, real years, where we could talk and laugh and heal. I got the knowledge that when I was tested, I did the right thing, and I had the chance to be part of something bigger, helping other families avoid what we went through. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. True family protects the vulnerable, and sometimes the bravest thing an 85-year-old woman can do is pretend to be helpless just to find out who will help her when she can't help herself. That's what I learned from Sarah Miller, my mother, my hero. The woman who taught me that dignity matters more than dollars, and that true love shows up even when there's nothing to gain. Mom took another sip of her tea, watching the rain. You know what I'm going to do tomorrow? What? I'm going downtown to give a talk to a group of seniors about how to protect their finances. I'm going to tell them my story. The whole thing. I smiled. They're going to think you're crazy. Probably. But if I save one person from going through what I went through, if I help one family avoid this betrayal, it will have been worth it. That was my mother. Even after everything, still thinking about how to help others, still finding purpose in pain. I'll go with you, I said. I'd like that. We sat there as the rain fell, mother and son, survivors of a test neither of us asked for, but both passed in our own way. It's been 2 years since that fake funeral. 2 years since Mom walked down that aisle and changed everything. Mark is getting out on parole next year. His kids, now young adults, are still deciding if they want to have any kind of relationship with him. Danielle and I have been there for them, trying to give them the family support their father destroyed. Fiona remarried 6 months ago. A good man, a teacher, who treats the kids well. I see them at family gatherings, and although things are awkward, we are healing. The Sarah Miller Fund has helped 47 families so far. 47 seniors facing financial abuse who had children, nephews, or caregivers stealing from them. We gave them legal assistance, connected them with investigators, helped them take back their lives. Mom gives talks twice a month. She became something of a local celebrity in elder protection circles. The woman who faked her own death to catch her thieving son. Sounds like a movie, but it's real. And me. I'm still the son who showed up, the son who visited 3 times a week, the son who chose love over money, integrity over inheritance. Was Mom's test worth it? I don't know. It was painful. It was dangerous. It destroyed our family in ways that will never fully heal. But it also revealed truths that needed to be revealed. It showed that Mark, my brother, the kid I grew up playing football with in the Gold Coast, was capable of terrible things when the temptation was great enough. And it showed me that I, when I was tested, when there was nothing to gain, could still choose the right path. That is the lesson I carry with me. Not about inheritances or money or cleverness, but about character. About who you are when no one is watching, when there is no reward, when the only thing at stake is doing the right thing because it's right. Mom is 87 now, still sharp, still strong, still fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. We had dinner together last night, laughing over a silly TV show, planning Danielle's birthday next month. Ordinary moments, precious moments, the kind of moments Mark lost because he chose to see our mother as an income source instead of as a person to love. Tomorrow I'm going to visit her again. Not because I have to, not because I'm waiting for an inheritance, but because she is my mother and love shows up, always. That is the story. The story of how my mother faked dementia and her own death to discover which of her children really loved her. The story of how my brother failed that test in the most spectacular way possible. And the story of how I learned that family isn't about blood or money. It's about showing up. It's about choosing love, even when it costs you. It's about protecting the vulnerable, even when no one is watching. Those are the lessons Sarah Miller, my mother, my hero, taught me. And they are the lessons I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Because in the end, that's what matters. Not how much you inherit, but who you choose to be when your character is put to the test. Mom tested me. I passed. And because of that, I have something money could never buy. The certainty that when it mattered, when it really mattered, I chose love. If you liked this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part shocked you the most. More tomorrow. See you there. Do you think the mother went too far by faking her death to test her children, or did Mark deserve this public punishment? Comment below.